No, I think she's a former AP Chem teacher. She knows content. She's good in Spanish. She's strong enough in math. You don't usually have somebody who's that around.
Okay, we are live.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As a reminder, the Charter Schools Review Board works to ensure the existence of high-quality charter schools in North Carolina. Board members are reminded that it is our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of the board. Does any member of the Review Board know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict of interest with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? If so, please state them for the record. Mr. Quigley?
I'll recuse from Rocky Mount Prep.
Okay.
I'm going to recuse from Monroe Academy and Rocky.
Okay, thank you. If during the course of this meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring the matter to the attention of the chair. It'll be your duty to abstain from participating in discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter. I want to thank everyone for the work we put in yesterday. We've got a big agenda here today as well, and so we're going to launch right in. First on the agenda today is a review of the school improvement plans. This is for a couple of schools. You may recall back in August we had several schools submit to us school improvement plans. These were schools that were given a 3-year renewal, recommended 3-year renewal by CSAB, and then also by the state board, but the state board put very specific stipulations on those 3-year renewals. When we heard from some of these schools in August, we had asked that I think 3 of them come back to us with another chance to look at their school improvement plan. 2 of those schools are here this morning, Monroe Academy and Rocky Mount Prep. So, Ms. Cook, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, Mr. Fenn gave my introduction, so I don't have much more to say other than to remind you all that you did approve Paul R. Brown's at your last meeting, and then so Monroe and Rocky Mount are here today. An apprentice will come before this board in October, and so that was just a summary of what we discussed. So I have the academic data in the slides if you would like it for reference. This was the academic data used for the renewal, so it's not the most recent data, but this is the academic data that was used for the renewal, as well as if you need to reference in the slides, there are the stipulations at the end. But I will go ahead and call up Monroe Charter Academy to present to you all their new school improvement plan.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. All right, so some of the things just want to highlight that we looked at as far as data-wise from Monroe Charter Academy that assisted us with creating our school improvement plan along with our professional development plan. In 2021-2022, we were recognized by the superintendent, Dr. Truitt, for academic growth. As the principal of that school, I was also recognized as the one having the top 50% of performing schools for that year. We met expected growth. Our overall growth was 80.9%. Our overall achievement was 12.5. Reading achievement was 20%. Reading growth was 85.4. Math achievement was 5%. And due to how low that was, we did not have math growth. However, our school performance grade was a 26. Going into last year, our overall growth was 74%. Our overall achievement, we went from 12.5 to 27.8. Our performance grade, we went from 26 to 37. And if I looked at our report card and looked at the grading scale correctly, we were 2 points away from moving into being recognized as a D school. Our reading achievement, we went from 20 to 28.6. And our math achievement, we went from 5 to 27. So overall, we're extremely excited with our growth and know that we have more room to go. Our enrollment, we finished our 20th day on yesterday, and we closed out at 158 students. So all that we looked into to create our school improvement plan.
What was the target enrollment?
160.
Okay. And those numbers, excuse me, the data you just shared was the most recent data that was released last week?
Yes,
Okay.
and the year before.
Okay.
Yes, sir. All right, so if we look at our school improvement plan, the goal one that we looked at was that Monroe Charter Academy will increase the school performance grade by 10% to meet expected academic growth. And one of the ways that we would do this is to make sure that we're alignment with the MTSS, the multi-tier support system. In order to do that, there are certain strategic objectives that we looked at. We were going to obtain this through the curriculum and state standards. The learning objectives is to make sure that that's posted daily in the classrooms. We're making sure that those objectives are student-friendly. And with that, to be specific, our increased reading and math for grades 3 through 6 and science for grade 5 proficiency scores by 10%. The action steps that we have in place will be to conduct a complete examination of all subject areas, to establish and maintain effective and clear communication and coordination between classroom teachers, school improvement team, and the parent engagement committee. Make sure that we conduct and provide ongoing professional development as it relates to curriculum development for all teachers around rigor and management. Our second strategy is the alignment of instruction to the specific learning objective, monitoring classroom instruction regularly, making sure that we're in alignment with the North Carolina standards and meeting the needs of the students at the same time. Our measurable data will be to compare EOG results, M-Class, NWEA data, and the NC check-ins data from the previous school year. And this action step to be able to meet strategy 2 would be that the administration and curriculum specialists will aggressively conduct weekly walkthroughs, provide clear and immediate feedback, along with coaching teachers that are not up to par in those particular areas to make sure that we're meeting the growth of our students. And the professional development that we will be offering for that particular goal will be the instructional leadership cohort, Want More, Do More. Myself, as the principal of the school, our curriculum specialist, and another lead teacher will be attending that training, professional development, and being able to come back to the school. We'll also be attending the OCS leadership program, the differentiation, providing teachers the differentiation classroom teaching strategies that maximize student success. That will be done through the Education, Innovation, and Solutions Incorporation, which is by Dr. Chance Lewis. Attend Core Knowledge, Go Math, Train the Trainer, which is part of Teach Like a Champion, which is through Dr. O'Neill and the Office of the Charter School and NC Access as well. For Goal 2, Monroe Charter Academy will provide a safe, nurturing, and culture educational environment that promotes leadership, personal growth, and lifelong learners, and reduce time off task by 10%. One of the things that we're looking at is to create a consistent culture that improves the management to make sure that we're also supporting the student learning, and to also make sure that we're creating an environment where students are having fun along the way. The measurables that we're going to compare and contrast teacher and students' time on task on student achievement, and how we're going to be able to do that is our first action step. We're going to meet with the school leadership team to continue implementing our vision through the focus areas of transition. I'm sure everyone in this room understands that it's important to make sure that we have a solid structure in place from the management perspective, how students enter in the building, how they're entering the classrooms, process and procedures, because if that's not put in place, then it's tough to teach because students aren't gathering all the information that they need. We will be identifying our school model, we will be identifying and modeling our school through what is the leader doing, what is the teachers doing, and then what are the students doing, to make sure that we're all on the same page and being able to use those key points for coaching perspectives. Our strategy 2, what we will be doing is to we're still creating a consistent culture within the school, but our impact of student achievement is that students are going to be connected to the learning and experience of sense of ownership. So not just teaching them, but assisting the students in owning what they're learning and being held accountable for their own growth and leadership and learning in the school. And that would be through the school leadership team will continue to meet to implement our vision through the focus areas of rigor, and making sure that we are creating a minute-by-minute guide of what should be happening in the classrooms, how fast students should be transitioning if we have those students that need to transition to different classes. Our progress indicators we're going to be looking at is attendance, tardies, referrals, M-Class, NWEA, NC check-ins, and data reports. Our professional development, we will continue with the instructional leadership cohort of Want More, Do More, OCS leadership program, culturally relative teaching strategies that maximize academic growth through the Education Innovations and Solution Incorporation. We would look at core knowledge and Go Math as well for data points and conditional and continuing professional development. Our goal 3, MCA will increase student and teacher attendance by 5%. There is a direct correlation between the students and the teacher's attendance and student achievement. So that's one of our focus areas for this year, and our specific is to increase student attendance by 5% monthly, just to ensure that all of our students are in the building. Our action steps, the school improvement team will analyze current events and enrichment activities that are offered at the school to make sure that we are still meeting the needs of the students. We will also, the school leadership team and the school improvement team and the school leadership team will create clubs that will be offered to students on a monthly basis so that they're able to make that connection between the content and the skills that's being taught throughout the day in the classrooms and being able to apply it to real world application. We will set goals for students' participation in clubs and attendance, and the school leadership team will create monthly and quarterly rewards and celebrations. And then on top of that, to make sure that we're also including our parents, the Parent Engagement Committee will recruit volunteers to assist with being able to offer the various clubs and extracurricular activities that we would be offering. For our second strategy, which is Monroe Charter will monitor staff attendance to ensure absences by teachers and staff are a minimum. What we'll do is create parent engagement events and workshops to provide learning opportunities for our parents and staff to be a part of the community and the school. And we'll use our current staff to maintain school culture and a positive interaction with students. Communicate resources to assist parents and staff as they navigate through social, emotional, and mental health challenges. And we'll also that we're proactively communicating our policies and procedures and expectations throughout the entire time that their child is with us at MCA. Professional development, instructional leadership cohort, Want More, Do More, the OCS leadership program strategies for increasing student attendance. That will be done by the Education Innovations and Solutions Incorporation. For goal 4, Monroe Charter Academy Board of Directors will increase their board effectiveness. We're strategy 1, they will develop and implement an ongoing board member training plan, and the action steps are listed. They will identify training topics most needed for the board as it is presently needed for that particular board. They will identify possible sources of training, which is through DPI, National Charter School Institute, Leaders, Bill's Leaders, and the North Carolina Charter School Association. They will look at adopting a policy on board member training, which establishes a 1-hour training session each fall, a 1-hour training session each spring, and a 2-hour training session over the annual meeting each summer. They will also incorporate feedback from training sessions, school self-study analysis of annual audit findings, and input from board members and staff in evaluation of training effectiveness and the selection of future training topics. The second strategy, they will recruit new board members that have expertise in the following areas of marketing, construction, real estate, law, and finance. And their action item for that, or our action item for that, is to contact local professional organizations and the Chamber of Commerce to advertise opportunities for service on the board. The next goal for the MCA board will be to, MCA board members will be trained on the 12 responsibilities of charter school boards. So strategy 1 is to organize a board retreat, and that action step would be to review, implement, assess for the 6 responsibilities of charter school boards. They will also organize another board retreat where they will still review, implement, and assess the final 6 responsibilities of charter school boards. And the progress indicators will be the attendance at the board retreats and participation in implementation of their roles and responsibilities. And the professional development to ensure that the board is meeting these goals will be board member comprehensive training will consist of strategies for effective governance that will be given by the Education Innovations and Solutions Incorporation. And they will also go through the charter school PD based on the 12 key responsibilities of charter schools. That will also be facilitated by Dr. Chance Lewis with the Education Innovation and Solutions Incorporation.
Thank you. It's a lot.
Take a deep breath, right?
Very thorough, I must admit.
So I'll start with some questions if that's okay. I'm curious, is the goal related to attendance, specifically, specifically staff attendance? Has that been an issue with the school, and what was magical about 5%? Like, what in the big picture? How many days is that? How many less days is that staff out of town, or not out of town, but out of school?
Yes, so it didn't become a problem with the staff attendance until last year. And the staff attendance increased with 3 particular teachers that happened in the 3rd and 4th quarter, which is, to me, the crucial quarters of the school year. Because that's when you're reviewing or, honing in on those last bit of skills before students are tested. That had a huge impact, I believe, on our students' success. So those 3 teachers are no longer with us.
What's the total number of staff that you have?
Last year we had 12.
And are the 2 gentlemen behind you board members?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Can you mind introduce yourself, if you don't mind?
Jim Seagal, I'm the board chair. Willie Owens, board member.
Okay. How many board members do you have?
7.
Okay.
7. And I believe we have a few more lines listening right now.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for Monroe?
I just want to thank you for coming back with a very good report, and I hope you're feeling better.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for completing your assignments.
Thank you.
Did somebody assist you? You might have said that. Did someone assist you with this?
Oh, yes, I reached out to a lot of people. I reached out to Office of the Charter School, the NC Access, Dr. O'Neill. I reached out to the board, of course, the entire staff that I have at my school, and Dr. Chance Lewis, who's with the Education Innovation as well.
Networking's key, right? Yeah. And I want to say congratulations on meeting your targets last year. But I will say, just looking at your data, minus 1.19. So it's inside the statistical range. So check mark one year, right?
Yes.
And it sounds like this plan hopefully will push you in the right direction to get that even higher next year.
Absolutely.
How many kids do you have this year?
158,
And what grades is that?
kindergarten through 6.
Ooh, so how many tested students?
3rd through 6th?
Yeah, I mean,
Through 6.
So how many tested?
1 second, I'm sorry.
62 it looks like. You tested 62 last year.
Yeah, it's more than that, this year. About 80 students this year.
What specifically are you looking at for reading? If you mention it, could you go a little deeper? Because that one's the only one that was not met.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, so what our curriculum, we realize that our students are able to read, but it's a different,
That's
it's a
okay.
difference between reading at something and reading for understanding. And so for our students, they can definitely read. Their reading scores have gone up as far as just being able to read, but being able to understand and articulate what they've read, that's where we're changing it and honing more in this year for our students.
So specifically, which methods will you use?
This year, we're definitely looking at our NWA data, testing data from last year, our NC check-ins. We're also going to look at iStation and also classroom assessments. And then from there, we're gonna break kids out into smaller groups through our remediation and enrichment period that we have every day for 45 minutes. On top of that, I will also be hiring, or we will be hiring, 3 interventionists that will, in addition, push into those areas of reading and math. So they will be strategically hired and placed. One of the also differences this year in 3rd grade is we have a teacher, we have just hired a teacher assistant to go into 3rd grade, to be able to assist that 3rd grade teacher. Will pull in small groups and meet in the individual needs of the students.
You will be observing their methods of instruction.
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
Which tools they're using and all of that.
Yes, and for our students for our EC students, we're changing things up a little bit. We realize that a lot of times in elementary, for our EC students, for resource times, they're pulled out. But when they're pulled out for resource times, they're actually missing a lot of the content on that particular grade level. So we're looking at each individual student to make sure that we're also meeting their needs, but we're having our resource teacher to push in to the upper grade classes and being able to assist. That way the students aren't missing so much of that grade level content, and we're able to close the gap a little closer.
You said you have a coach, or you have somebody that's leading the staff development. Who's doing that?
Yes, Dr. Chance Lewis.
Is there coaching for teachers involved in that, or is it just a staff development and then go?
No, there's coaching pieces of that. Myself, my curriculum specialist, Ms. Brett, and another teacher, we're attending the Do More, Want More. Yes, and so we're learning more in-depth coaching strategies from that cohort to be able to bring it back into the school so that we can eventually end up teaching more, training more teachers to be coaches and be school-wide.
So one of the stipulations that you're under for the next 3 years is that every board member, as well as the school leadership team, participate in at least 5 leadership professional development trainings. How many of those trainings have been done thus far, and what's been the participation of the board? Okay.
At least so far, we only had one.
Okay.
That was, one from our former consultant earlier this year.
And did all board members participate?
I think it was.
Okay.
I don't frankly recall it myself, but, I mean, I recall the training, but I don't recall how many were there.
How often does your board meet?
Every month.
Okay. Where can we get the minutes? Because I'm on your website and.
Website, but right now the website that we had, that had the minutes on there going back for that should be up, what, in about,
2 days.
yeah,
Okay.
people who are redoing that for us, tell us 2 days.
So I want to state the obvious, and this, I hope this doesn't come across as chiding, but a consistent theme I think that we see in schools that are perpetually low performing are board members who aren't as engaged as they should be. And we've got 3 years to turn this around, and we've got to make sure that the board is, if we approve this plan this morning, the board, you have to hold yourself and the school leadership accountable on every one of these goals.
I fully understand that, sir, and in fact, the reason we're here today is because the board, myself in particular, dropped the ball on that. When you gave us the 2-year extension with this provision, I was not focused enough on seeing to it that our school improvement plan meet the standard that you had set for us. And I realized that the last meeting, when you talk about chiding, I know a chiding when I hear one, so I was listening in on that last meeting, and I understood that where our deficiency was, and that's why we kind of jumped in with both feet and worked really hard to come up with this plan. In fact, that goal number 4, that's basically something I came up with myself, in consultation with others, of course, but we recognize that the board had lost focus for a little bit. The cause of the problem that we had with the school improvement plan, and why the school, well, we could do better with more focus.
Okay.
We know that, now we're doing that.
I appreciate that response, and I'm going to state the obvious here. I don't know if you listened in yesterday, but now as we are the Charter School Review Board, the decision rests with us on issues of renewals as well. And the bar was high, as I mentioned yesterday, and I think it's even higher now. We won't hesitate to close schools that continue to be low performing. So I hope we can turn the tide on this.
I think it's also important that when you have your board trainings, that you do have a sign-in sheet, because we're going to ask for documentation that the board did meet and who was there, so please continue to do that also.
I was just about to say that. And the location of the training, and I would like to see the years added on these dates. So it's no question, August 29th through 30th, 2023, et cetera, et cetera.
It might even be a good
Yeah,
idea for you to
document.
make those publicize those meetings like you would an open meeting, right? And then keep minutes on it, and just make the minutes the record for your training that you did, so that way you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone.
If you have a forum, it has to be an open meeting.
Publicize them.
And the location, time.
Other questions or comments from board members? Mr. Quigley?
This is more for staff or the board. In terms of process, I think one of the challenges is that, the state board just released the public data on achievement. Schools don't have their final enrollment numbers. So it's literally I just have seen this play out. Schools come before us, August, September, we just get their data. They tell us the enrollment's okay. We give them more time. They come back with a plan, say everything's gonna be great. They come back next year, the data's not great, the enrollment's not great. They ask for more time. We feel bad because if we close them in the middle of the year, it actually is a problem, because those kids then need to get transferred. It makes the district mad. It impacts financial. We have outstanding financial issues. So I just can kind of see this happening again and again and again, and I think a lot of it has to do with the timelines. And so I just think from a process perspective, particularly with our new responsibility, and we have more opportunity here to move quicker, because before we literally were like, if we make this recommendation this month, it's going to go to discussion on first read, then it's gonna go to action, then it's gonna go to appeal. It's a 6-month process. But I feel like we're gonna be back in the same situation, whether it's with this school, it's not even what I'm talking about. I'm just using them as an example. So how do we not just repeat this cycle over and over again? And also, at what point do we look at, and I've said this before, the composite, here's where you've been for 5 years. Sorry, you are done. It's not, it's just, you've had your chance and time is up. That's, whether it's at renewal or not. Usually it should be at renewal, but I feel like the timelines are part of the problem. We should be able to make a decision for closure in May, but a lot of times we don't have data. We don't have enrollment numbers, and everybody says, you know, nothing can stop a group from coming in here and saying, enrollment's going great, and we think we're going to hit growth this year.
And that's what they'll say in May. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
And they may have internal metrics that say that, but who knows?
I think there's other. How
do we fix this?
I do appreciate what you're saying, and folks, we're not.
Yeah, we're not. This is
specifically
not
talking
about you specifically.
How's that?
But I
I
think
guess they're saying, well, please excuse me.
I just feel like if this is not the place to have this conversation, where are we having this conversation? I feel like this is a place to have this conversation. This is a recurring problem that happens. And, you know, I bring my 8 years of time on the board and seeing this happen over again. I'm Dave. I think you've lived this out. Office of Charter Schools has lived this out.
We're at a point now we really have to have our ducks in a row.
And I think we are charged with, we've been given a lot more authority.
so. My initial response to that is I appreciate exactly what you're saying, and it is a challenge. I think I would start with the schools that are on the 3-year renewal. I mean, those schools are on the clock because they got a 3-year renewal. The schools that got 3-year renewal we weren't debating should they get 5 or 7. We were debating whether they get 3 or whether they are shut down. So I think that, yes, these schools got a 3-year renewal, but they are on the clock to me, in my mind, every year.
True.
Every year.
True.
And we'll be bringing this group and the others back. I would predict every year.
Of course.
To your point, though, they'll come in May, and we don't have our test scores yet, but we think they're going to be solid. We think we're going to meet growth.
It's conjecture.
It's not supported by data, but I think there's other data points that we can also look at too, that we get a sense of what's transpiring. When we have schools, and again, I'm not picking on this school. When we have schools that, like this past
Y'all
cycle,
can probably sit down.
Yeah.
You can just go sit down.
So it doesn't look like we're talking about you specifically. When we
I
have
guess I'll say I'm back. I don't know what to say.
Yeah. When we have schools like some of the schools, if I remember from this past cycle, and we don't have their test data yet. But you know what we don't have? We don't have any indication that their board has ever even met, or they can't tell us who board members are. There's turn. I mean, there's.
Well, this is a decent plan, but it's just words. Turning intention to action is the difference between success and failure in schools, and lots of schools have good intentions, but acting on it is a whole nother ballgame. Mm-hmm. It's a battle every day to get the plan that you have in mind to execute, and they didn't even have it. It's inexcusable they didn't have it the first time.
Well, and remind me, which schools did we recommend for closure last year? Was this?
No, this was not one.
No.
Well,
We recommended
The only one you
3-year.
recommended for closure that did not close was Zecca.
And then when they came back with school improvement plans that were just at that meeting, I got to be honest with you, I was ready right then to close them down. But we were under at that point in time a stipulation to help get a school improvement plan in place.
Right. Which again, I get it. I guess I'm just saying, particularly also, how many schools have had multiple 3-year charters? Healthy Start should have been closed if within the year they didn't make dramatic gains. I think they were on their third 3-year charter. Like, how many 3-year charters are we going to get?
I think that's for us now to decide.
Yeah, like, we need that data, like how many schools are on multiple back-to-back 3-year charters, how many schools there are schools that we have 10 years of data.
Well,
And I would just argue that schools can say they're serving a specific community, this or that, but if the data were a little bit better than the other schools that fit the demographic, and I would argue those schools end up taking 80% of the off the chart schools spending 80% of their time on 20% of the schools, as well as school business and everybody else.
well, I will say for renewals this past year, the board did look at, when it was a CSAB, did look at the history of the renewals, and we pulled data for 10 years. So I think looking back and seeing those patterns is very helpful. I also think which is why we're shifting now to more of having a specific school improvement team rather than doing putting on professional development, which people are already doing that. That's not an effective use of our time. And so I think part of what you see up here is part of us, which I have to give credit to Jenna, she did this, is us taking those schools that we have stipulations on, that we have, when we know those 3 years are our repetitive 3 years, and those are kind of our high-risk schools, and making sure that we have a constant check-in within, that we are tracking all of the different aspects of the stipulations, which, these are pretty weighty stipulations that the state board put on. And I think that is one way that we can try to catch things quicker and provide support quicker. But the reality of the situation is we have 211 schools, and I have right now, a limited staff. And then in addition, you need staff in other divisions like EC or financial business services and things like that have charter folks that are monitoring these things so that we get them to you in time. Because what over the years I've noticed is that things kind of slowly snowball, and if you don't have people that are catching them early on, then that's where you guys see them last minute. And anybody that went through the closure process last year knows that with several closures, it is a insane amount of work, and it pulls resources from the entire agency. And then you also have to collaborate with LEAs, who may or may not have, that depends on what kind of staffing they have and how they're interacting with you. So from my experience in the office, I think one of the biggest the best thing we can do is just have a constant kind of monitoring plan in place so that things don't snowball and that it's coming to you at an early stage.
And there's things in these stipulations that if one of these schools is before us and we have one of these schools coming in March, April, May, they won't have it's all conjecture in terms of what they say their data is going to be. But some of these stipulations are pretty cut and dry. I mean, you must not have any financial compliance warnings over the next 3 years.
Yeah, no,
if we invite them back in May and they have a warning.
I think people need to download. I mean, most applications happen online. I want to see their applications. Mm-hmm. I think we need to see a downloaded file.
Of the original?
No, in the spring.
Okay.
Don't you all have hundreds of applications by April? Right?
You're talking about student applications.
Yeah, student applications.
Sorry.
Student applications school. No, sorry. We're talking about enrollment, right? We're talking about what are the indicators.
Intent to returns. Enrollment.
Off the charter schools person, get on the Zoom with them and watch them download their thing from Scribbles or whatever else, so that we can verify how many applications they have.
Well, to your point of making quick decisions, like what he just read, the next school's presentation, they're already not met. You can see behind us, and then there's financial questions.
Mm-hmm.
I also think,
and there's, if they're supposed to not have 1 year of it, where are we with them now? If you already got a warning for financials and you've not met.
So I understand, Alex, and I think while I didn't love the idea of what the state board sent back to us and said, you gotta figure this out. I think ultimately, the last couple of years, if anyone's paying attention, they've learned that we'll close charter schools.
Yeah.
And,
No, I get it.
And with these stipulations and with the way that the Office of Charter Schools has organized itself, I think that folks understanding that we're not just saying these things, but we are going to expect to see this data, to see your sign-in sheets, to see your board meetings, to see your minutes online. I think that it comes down to then what comes next. Whereas if a school isn't doing these things, are we quick to act? And it appears to me as if we are poised to do so. But I think that's where the rubber meets the road. In folks beginning to understand that, you know, you don't get a 10-year room about the cabin and then we're gonna figure out what you've been doing for 10 years.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that has been happening.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, I'm not criticizing this board. I think I think I'm calling out the process and not criticizing off charter schools because they're giving us much more data, continue to have more staff. It's like we've got to, you know, it's one of the reasons why I pushed to change the application process so we can get the timeline, so we can give schools more time, which I think it changed, right? We weren't normally, I don't think, just making decisions in September or trying to. I feel like we don't want to let the process get in, you know. There's lots of data points that we can get. I think we can make decisions on a timeline that OCS can manage things better. I think that's a huge.
I think you bring out a good point. I think we do have the ability now to be more proactive and more timely, if needed, to take action on schools that just.
Yeah.
And I don't care if it's if it's year 2 or year 3, or if it's after year 1. If the indicators are not there.
Yeah. I guess this will be the last thing that I say, kind of on Ashley's point about trying to support schools that are low performing, and we need to do that, right? I led a month, 8-month cohort for schools, many of them low performing last year. Going to do it again this year. All those things are really good, and I think they can help. And we had a number of schools exceed growth that hadn't previously. I think the other point is turnaround is exceedingly difficult, and I speak from a person that has done it. And I think there's this element of like we want to support schools. I want to be careful of that mindset that it is our responsibility or the Office of Charter Schools' responsibility. It is these schools' responsibility, and districts and the state of North Carolina, as pertains to publics, traditional publics, there's a different. I feel like that's a different thing, right? We say, take your charter, you have autonomy, do it. If you can't do it, you get closed. And I just feel like we shouldn't be burdened. Like, we want to see the schools serve well, but that is their responsibility. They should have the plan written. We shouldn't have to ask them. It should be done. When I took over Healthy Start, I had a plan written before I even took over, because I needed a plan, and the board needed to see my plan. And you guys didn't even ask me for it. So it's like, it is your responsibility. You trade accountability for autonomy. It is not the state's responsibility. It's not the Office of Charter Schools. It's not this board's responsibility. Get it done or you're done. I just feel it is your job to go to trainings that are going to get you there. It is your job. And I just want to be careful that we don't get in this mindset of like, it is our job. It is the school improvement team, the renewal schools, like that is traditional publics, because they know closing traditional public schools is not something that, it doesn't happen. And it's not going to happen. And you know what? There's a massive safety net around those schools. There's a whole bunch of different schools in the district that they can go to. It's just a very different proposition. And I just think we should be steely-eyed about, and also clear that this is not our job. It is not our job to fix your school. It is your job.
I have a question
I'm
about
gonna- we do,
I want to ask one question
Okay.
about,
Yeah.
to Ashley, and I don't, this may be a DPI question about testing. I know scores are redacted and all that other kind of stuff until they release it, but I mean, I remember back in the day when you'd scan your scores and you knew how your kids did.
I mean, we
that
all have
day.
it.
Yeah.
We all have it.
So my
And this is we can go
my
to closed
question is-
session and see the scores.
Well, my question is, when can we get maybe unofficial results, but I think we can get them sooner than September. There's no reason
The
not to get
day,
them
2
sooner.
days after the test is
They're
done.
done.
We have it a day after the
Most
test.
testing is
Yeah,
done by
everybody
June
does.
1st.
Everybody does.
yeah, proficiency right away.
That's what I'm saying.
That I think I'd have to
We can't
do
get
some
growth.
more,
We
you know.
can't get growth
I
out
think
of
there
it.
might be some legal implications with that, but I also, just to give some context to this conversation, of the 211 schools we have, there's 13 that have had multiple 3-year renewals. So, and only 4 have gotten more than 2. So I think they're, like, yes, this is something that we can improve, and there's definitely things to work on with our low performing schools, but it's a very small number of schools that are actually getting multiple 3-year renewals.
So I'm gonna try to, because we do have to take action on this plan.
Sorry.
But
I just feel like we gotta have these conversations.
Hilda
This is
and
part
Dave-
of
I'd like
the,
to-
Yeah.
this is part of the re-norming of our responsibility as a new board. So that's my excuse for talking so much.
Alex, I don't disagree with you at all. As long as I sat at this table at different chairs, I get very frustrated when a school comes in and they've been open for multiple years, and then they come up with this great plan and think, well, why didn't you do it when you opened up? But at the same time, I feel like these schools were given a 3-year renewal. I think we should commit to supporting them to see if there's any improvement. Now, the stipulations that Mr. Friend just read, if there's some sort of financial noncompliance, you know, that's the death.
Yeah.
So, and I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. But at the same time, the school comes up, particularly a school like Monroe's, I think this is their first renewal. We committed to a 3-year. Let's see how they do year by year by year, and they're not just telling us what they're doing, they're showing us what to do. I think the rigor of renewals has increased quite a bit. I think everybody's interpretation of what we should be doing has increased. But, you know, they stand at the podium and they tell us what they're gonna do, and you think, I've heard this before. This is what they're gonna do. If they don't do it, then we have the grounds to close it. But in my opinion, let's give them as much of that 3 years as we can to turn it around. And why they haven't done it yet, that's, you know, we could all probably agree with why that hasn't happened. But I'd like to see us commit to supporting these schools throughout their renewal to see if they can turn it around.
Yeah.
Right, because we can't change in the middle of the road at this point,
Well, it's a lot easier
just
to do.
because
Yeah.
he's voiced his opinion.
I would just say that I think all these schools have, between last interview, I'm hoping that all these schools are listening to this conversation today, even if they're not in the room. I think the message is out there that they know they are on the clock, and I do agree with you, Mr. Quigley, that it's not our job to do their job.
Yeah.
It's our job to hold them accountable
Right.
for the things that they say they're going to do.
And it's not the Office of Charter Schools' job either. Like, autonomy is the gift that we give, and you accept accountability for it.
Amen.
You hold the charter?
Well,
Any other questions for our, Monroe, you may come back up if you want.
Go on home.
I make a motion that we accept their school improvement plan as written and presented today.
Okay.
Is that official motion?
I'll second that.
So we have a motion to approve the plan as presented today, a second. Is there any further discussion? I would just like to say thank you for doing a much better job this time with submitting the plan. Let's not take multiple times in the future. Ashley, you want to do a roll call vote?
Sure. Eric Sanchez.
Accused.
Oh, sorry. Bruce Friend.
Aye.
Hilda Parlay.
Approves.
Todd Godby.
Aye.
Dave Machado.
Aye.
John Eldridge.
Aye.
All right, passes.
I can vote.
Oh, you can? I thought you recused from that.
Oh, not from Monroe.
Oh, okay. Alex Quigley.
Aye.
Okay,
All right.
thank you, Monroe, yes. Jenna?
Next school that we have for you tonight is Rocky Mount Prep. Just as a reminder, Rocky Mount submitted a completed plan, but there was some change to school leadership, so the board asked them to come back so that the new leadership had enough time to review the plan and make revisions. So $22 at Rocky Mount Prep.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Keenan Bradley. I'm the chairman of the board. And first I want to express the appreciation of our board for your attention and help in our school improvement plan. We are confident that we have a better plan now. We now have specific driven goals for the staff as well as for the board. We've begun the school year with a new leadership, and I must add that this has been and is critically important. New determination and culture, and we believe that this is essential to growth and proficiency. That being said, culture and goals alone would leave us short of where we need to be without this improved plan. In terms of changes on the board, we created formal financial and instructional committees. Second, the board has adopted detailed financial policies that address the problems that we have run into or had run into. We've endeavored to match the changes in our plan to your recommendations, and again, we appreciate your recommendations. For the details of the plan, I'd like to ask our acting head of school, Dr. Heather Collins, to speak to the board and to describe this new plan. So with your agreement, I'll introduce Dr. Collins.
Good morning.
Good morning. I hope each and every one of you are doing well this morning, and thank you for the opportunity to take a minute and review the plan that was submitted and to make changes and to add specific timelines to the plan. I want you to be aware that the focus of R&P is to ascend to excellence by getting back to basics. Realizing where we are, our stats are no secret. However, I am assured that with getting back to basics, with teacher efficacy and training, bell-to-bell instruction, our minute-by-minute planning, our new lesson plan format, curriculum mapping, and aligning to the pacing guide, we will help to ensure that our teachers are providing quality instruction. Using quizzes and assessments will be vital to implementing remediation to our students in order to improve our data. Also increasing walkthroughs. We have had the privilege to hire our coaches, interventionists, and tutors to scaffold support throughout our school and to increase our parent engagement in order to have them as participants in their scholars' growth and to lessen disciplinary referrals, which will increase time in seats. As we look at our goals and our strategies, for goal 1, 100% of our classrooms will deliver rigorous standards aligned to grade level content as measured by our observations and our walkthroughs. We are using the Get Better Faster trajectory with fidelity. Our team has attended the relay training, and as you can see in the plan, and without reading date by date, we have done a lot in the last month with completing many of our goals and objectives. So they attended their relay training, which was completed July 28th. Our instructional coaches attended Want More, Do More training on August the 28th. And again, our staff and our instructors have been trained with Get Better Faster. Our second strategy in order to increase train and implement weekly and data planning meetings with fidelity. We have trained our staff on new curriculums such as journeys, wanders, springboards, the springboard curriculum, in order to ensure that our teachers are teaching to the standards every day and staying on task. Our weekly data meetings help us to review our quizzes and assessments using our exit tickets to ensure that those areas that are weak are strengthened in remediation. Our after-hour excellence tutoring begins next week with our scholars. We are happy to also announce again that we will be starting our Saturday Enrichment Academy this Saturday, September the 16th, and that our interventionists are pushing it into our classrooms on a daily basis. So I am really excited to see the level of support that is flooding our classrooms. We have completed our content and curriculum training for our staff on August the 18th, and by the end of October 20th, we look to be in phase 2 of our Get Better Faster rigor. For goal 2, we are projecting that 100% of our scholars will achieve growth by 2024, and we are recovering that lost instructional time measured by the formative end of grade and end of course assessments by June 2024. Now, with that deadline being far off, in the middle of our timeline, we also have our assessments, we have our BOGs, we have our iReady, our IXL data, our Mastery Connect data that also gives us the opportunity to identify quarterly where our scholars are on the road to achievement. We are implementing data-driven interventions for our scholars in K-12. On our 9-12 level, our advisory period in the morning is now intervention, where our scholars spend 50 minutes reviewing curriculum and information that is needed for them to be successful on the end of course test. As mentioned, we have hired our interventionists and our coordinators. That was completed by August the 7th. We completed a tutoring schedule based on our master schedule, which was completed by August 31st, so that every person in our building has direction. They have small group instruction and one-on-one instruction for our scholars that are on that level 2 wavelength in order to get them to 3s. And of course, our low-level ones to get them to 2s and to be able to move them ahead of time. Of course, our weekly lesson plans are important, our PLCs are important, and ensuring that we are communicating to our parents the progress of their students, again, on a quarterly basis with our progress reports and being able to move forward with town hall meetings and data information meetings for our parents, so our parents know how to interpret the data. Our goal 3 is to lessen our discipline referrals and removal from instruction time by 50% as measured by our educator's handbook. We have a great team of teachers that are creating a new positive culture for our scholars. Our scholars have new expectation and understanding as to what is expected of them on a daily basis. That is arrival time, minute-by-minute plans, departure time, minute-by-minute plans, hallway transition, morning circle, and morning circle plans, in the beginning of our classrooms. So we are starting our day differently to ensure that our scholars have a good start to the instructional period. We also have added a comprehensive social and emotional learning model to support our scholars that they will receive every morning in their classrooms. If a scholar does happen to receive a referral that takes them out of class, they are meeting with our counselors, they are meeting with our assistant principals to ensure that we are mediating behaviors before they are started and that they have more time in the classroom in order not to miss content that is needed for adequate growth and assessment. Our goal 4 is that we will retain 90% of our staff as measured by retention data in June 2024. And to do this, we will establish feedback loops to support teacher voices and recognition of their value within our school environment. We have developed a system of weekly, daily, and monthly recognition for our team members. We have implemented quarterly assessment feedback surveys so that we can assess the temperature of our staff and of our instructors to make sure that we can support them on a daily basis as well. And of course, make every use of our moments by celebrating all of our accomplishments along the way. We also have made a valiant effort to protect teacher planning and non-instructional time in order to make sure that they have time to plan, meet with their teams, review data, and make sure that their scholars are supported by supplemental and enrichment activities in the classroom. Goal 5 is that 100% of our teachers will grow in their effectiveness rating, resulting in improved proficiency and academic growth for their scholars measured by observation and feedback, and our EVAS measures by June 2024. Each teacher is provided with a job-embedded professional development with, again, daily and weekly and monthly access to professional development opportunities. At RMP, we use our Fridays to ensure that our teachers are receiving professional development in multiple areas, from classroom management to school leadership to lesson plans to providing support services in the classroom and ensuring that they are comfortable with the curriculum and the content that they are offering their scholars. We are supported by the North Carolina New Teacher Support Program for our beginning teachers that host 10 workshops throughout the year to make sure that our beginning teachers are growing in their specific content areas and that they feel comfortable delivering this content to their scholars. As far as our board trainings are concerned, we are proud to report that we have had our first board retreat on July the 31st, and all of our board members and our school instructional staff, our school administrative staff, was present. That was our board retreat. Upcoming board workshops are our trainings on budget and finances, which is going to be this upcoming week. Moving forward into October, we will also review education law and policy, and then curriculum and instruction overview with our board and our staff in order to make sure that our board members are a part of the culture and the development of our school as we grow and move the needle forward in order to obtain growth and success in our program. Our 5th leadership session is that on community engagement for our board on how to ensure that we are not just a school in the community, but we are a resource to our community. And then our 6th session this year is on equity and inclusion. So we are excited about the opportunity to educate our scholars. Again, I realize that we are starting from the basics in order to ensure that our scholars have what they need, but I am confident with the team that we have, the goals that we have already accomplished in our plan, that we are well on our way to success.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Questions from board members?
Who are all is on the board right now?
So with us today, we have Mr. King Bradley, who is our board chair. We have Ms. Jean Kitchen, and we have Mr. Charles Davis.
Who else is on the board?
Online is Ms. Tanika Bryant.
So there's 4 board members? Which board members attended the July 31st training?
Those present behind.
What about the one online?
Ms. Bryant is a new board member as of the August 14th.
So she's not.
there.
I have more of a comment for the board, and because I don't know if you all can see what I see, but the index growth score for this school last year was minus 5.53. -2 means you didn't meet growth. -4 is, I don't even know, the growth for the students at this school is scary low.
And then you say by June 2024, that 100% of your students, 100%,
Yes.
will have academic growth. How can you guarantee that?
We are scaffolding our curriculum and our training along with tutoring and interventions. We have 3 coaches that are serving our elementary, middle, and high, supported by 3 interventionists that are supported by 15 tutors throughout our building. That is also supported by a group of 15 tutors for our Saturday Academy.
And where are those tutors coming from?
The first group of tutors is coming from East Carolina as a part of their tutorial program. And then our Saturday enrichment program is coming from the TEL program.
Are these tutors paid?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am, excuse me.
And then you say 100% of your teachers will also show effectiveness
Yes, ma'am.
in their ratings.
We are,
Tall order.
it is a tall order, but we don't have time to play. And we have to ensure that each person in our building is pulling their weight in order to ensure that our scholars meet growth. And so with teacher observation, with a tiered approach, we are in our teachers' classrooms every day, observing and ensuring that they are teaching to the curriculum, that they are aligned to their lesson plan. So even if you walked into the classroom today, you would know what that teacher is doing, and you would feel confident that our scholars are receiving a quality education. So they have walkthroughs, they have their teacher observations, they have their meetings with us in the PLCs to review data and to ensure that they're meeting the mark. And this is happening weekly.
But you said every day.
The walkthrough.
Every day somebody's in that classroom.
Yes, ma'am. The walkthroughs and observations are happening every day. The weekly data meetings are happening weekly. You're welcome.
When's the last time the board met?
Yesterday.
Okay. Just comment, your website doesn't show that you've met since May 8th.
Underneath our board meetings, our minutes should be updated.
I'm looking at now, the last one is May 8th. So that's for the board, that's, yeah, for the, yeah.
But who manages the website?
We'll make sure those documents are posted. We've met several times during July, it being a time of change for us. And the board had to confer, as I said, several times. We met last night for our September board meeting. We meet once a month.
Are the board meetings posted on the door of the school as well?
Yeah, I'm on your website right now, it says the last minutes that are posted are May 8th.
And there are no agendas.
Yeah, no agendas. So you need to button that up.
If you'd like a response from me this afternoon, I'll find out why that's the case.
Just,
I totally agree.
I understand, yeah,
It should be.
just correct it, that's all,
It
yeah.
should be, and it will be correct.
Okay. What is the status of the financial concerns that, when you came before us in August, it was either around that same time, there was a letter about some concerns about money that was not accounted for. Can you update us on that?
Well, we're very close to an update, which is going to be on Thursday afternoon. We'll be glad to send to the charter board what we find. I believe missing money, I haven't received the report yet, but
When you say report, is it like a forensic audit? Who's doing the report?
Charter Success Partners that worked with us during this period in question agreed to go back through the transactions that were in question. And I believe they found virtually everything. I do not expect to find missing money. I do expect to find, or there's a possibility that some things were miscoded and therefore some ESSER money did not come to us that we expected. The funding, the funding that we expected with ESSER, we provided out of our fund balance.
Yeah, if you could send us that report that you receive, and maybe it'll be reflected in your minutes of your meeting, you can just send it to the Office of Charter Schools, and they can disseminate that to us. That'd be helpful.
Yes.
Yep. What's the status, when we were together in August, Dr. Collins was listed as the interim head of schools. Is that still the case, and is there plans to remove that interim tag? Or am I putting you on the spot for a personnel decision you're not ready to make?
How about yes? We're very pleased. The board is very pleased with Dr. Collins' leadership. We're very glad to have someone who has both financial background and, interestingly, has psychology background. So she brings two new, rich resources to a school that we understand and acknowledge needs some healing and some care in finances that wasn't there in the previous leadership. And the question about removing interim to make it permanent, I'd like to confer with my board before I say anything more.
Absolutely understand that. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I was just curious if there had been any decision made, that's all. I guess the last thing I'll say is, and you heard the discussion that we had prior to you stepping up to the podium. We don't need to repeat all of that. I know you heard it. You've got a very high bar, you know, when you're saying every student in your school is going to make growth. What was it? Every teacher. You know, the stipulations placed upon you from the state board was you must meet or exceed growth at least 2 out of the 3 years. As Mr. Eldridge just pointed out, you didn't meet it this year.
Didn't meet it this year.
So
We know that, and interestingly, the changes we're talking about didn't have any time to have an impact on last year.
yes.
Our transition in leadership took place abruptly at the end of July. And I'd have to say, as a board chairman, I think I speak without having to confer with the rest of the board. We're very pleased with the leadership that Dr. Collins has given us. I agree with Dr. Collins. The only way you hit a high bar is you set the high bar. I'm reminded of the Virginia coach after he lost in the opening round in the NCAA tournament a number of years ago. Went to his team and said, the only way we're going to get to where we're going is by going through what you just went through. Now, that's not a good paraphrase, but that's a paraphrase of what he said. Acknowledge
There's just,
this situation.
to state the obvious, there's just no wiggle room. Like, there's just no wiggle room. I mean, we can't have you back in April, May, or 1 year from today, and it's like, oh, the plan is working, we just haven't seen the results yet. Like, there's just not the wiggle room in that, that's all. So, any other comments or questions from board members?
I have 2 last questions, and I'll stop. One is, does the board review financials every meeting?
Yes, and more frequently than that.
So I guess the question then would become, how is it the last administration's fault that this money's missing? Or uncoded or in the wrong place?
I really believe that to answer that question, we should go into closed session.
Well, okay, I just think it's also important for the board to also understand that it's not something that you find out at the end of the year. I have a presentation from the finance people from the company that I work with each board meeting. And I know where, and they know where the money is each time. So, enough said on that from me. The second piece is what changed from the plan that you submitted in August. We gave you a month. Can you highlight the changes that were made in the plan? Like what areas? You don't need to read them. What parts got changed?
So, the original plan was stacked heavy with multiple, supports such as relay, teach like a champion, get better faster. There was a lot of information in the plan that would not have been possible for our team to turn around in such a small.
So you zoomed in on.
So we zoomed in on what was possible to get done, and that's what we did. So we took out the relay aspect, we took out the teach like a champion, and we focused specifically on want more, do more, and get better faster. Our teachers had more experience with those, with the get better faster, and introducing relay to them would have been a heavy lift, and I did not want us to fail.
So
in that
those two are really at the core of what you're going to do.
Those two are the core of what we're doing.
Thank you.
So what happens in want more, do more? What type of sessions?
So
What titles of sessions?
So Want More, Do More is our coaching strategies for our coaches that are taught how to go in the classroom and display lessons, how to support the teacher in coaching, teaching methodologies as well around instruction and curriculum for our coaches.
Ashley, how many 3-year renewals has Rocky Mountain received in the past? Have you got that handy?
I do, 1 second.
And this is a case of
3.
three straight? Yeah, this is a case where, when you see a plan, I wanna say, where was it last year? Where was it 3 years ago? Where is it 5 years ago? You know, same conversation we had earlier. Rocky Mountain Prep is one of our oldest schools, even, I think, one of the first ones to be chartered. It's disappointing that Rocky Mountain Prep continues to come before us with such poor grades. So hope and praying that this plan will be successful.
Any other comments, questions for the board or interim head of school? Okay, hearing none, would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll move that we approve this plan.
A motion to approve the plan. Can I get a second?
I second.
Second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. Ashley, can we do a roll call vote?
Yes. Bruce Friend,
Aye.
Hilda Parlay,
Approves.
Todd Godby,
Aye.
Dave Machado,
Aye.
John Eldridge.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So let's, before we go into the interview of the next applicant, why don't we take about a 10, 12-minute break, reconvene at 10:30. We did a really good job yesterday, so we're catching up for being behind today, I guess. So let's come back at 10:30. over to Ms. Racky.
Good morning. So we will continue our application cycle for our standard timeline, folks. On slide, I don't know if we want to acclimate our applicants to the process on slide 14, just to kind of give a background of today and what that looks like. And so there's an hour allotted, and then board, I'll remind you that American Traditional Academies is the EMO that is associated with our first applicant today, and so there's an additional half an hour allotted at the end for you all to do a Q&A with the management organization, and so they have representatives, I think, here in person and possibly online to kind of discuss those questions that you have. And so essentially, for the Liberty Board, we will go over some initial snapshot data, and then you all will be given that 10 minutes to make your introduction statements. The Review Board will have a Q&A session, and then you'll be allowed the 10 minutes for your closing statements, and then ultimately the voting and your deliberation. And so there's one of three outcomes. Today, Review Board, you can approve them, you can deny them, or you can invite them back for a second round interview. And so today we have Liberty Charter Academy here, slated for open in Guilford County. And so we have their mission statement here. LCA will develop responsible and active citizens through a foundation of a challenging classical academic program, character education, student responsibility, and strong parental partnerships. And so they're open in year one with grades K-9, serving that 645 students, ultimately reaching K-12 with 1,227 students. These enrollment projections are based upon pulling about 1,100 students from Guilford, 90 students from Davidson County, and then 34 students from Randolph by year 5. And then if you look, let's see, they will not be a National School Lunch participant. Their budget line items account for up to 40% of their student body qualifying for free or reduced lunch prices. They will contract with the local service provider to provide community bus stops to their students. They will also use the weighted lottery. There is not a facility slated, but they have kind of narrowed down their zip codes, and they are a repeat applicant. So if you remember, we've heard from Liberty Charter in our previous cycle, and so then obviously the EMO provided application assistance to this board. And the application was deemed complete by the Office of Charter Schools. And so as we look at Guilford County at large, there are 13 charter schools in Guilford County, 126 traditional schools, and 1 lab school. And so you can actually look at the subgroup comparison to Guilford County at large, keeping in mind in terms of our EDS data that we have. I think our accountability teams, they certify in December and in April. And so some of these EDS numbers have actually been trued up now. There's new designations as it relates to kind of the direct certification. So students that qualify for federal Medicaid are now included in like direct certification. So EDS numbers have trended up. And so we always anticipate that EDS numbers are higher, but you can compare.
Where's the school?
Guilford.
I mean, is it
On the
down
Yeah.
here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so they're anticipating pulling from Guilford at large and then Davidson and Randolph counties according to their budget projections. And so again, we have the schools projected enrollments in that blue bar and then comparing it to Guilford County in that gray. And so in terms of the board, there are 6 board members for Liberty. One of them is absent today. The chair is Mr. John O'Day. And so at this time, I'd like to call Mr. O'Day to come up and make the board's 10-minute introduction statement.
Good morning. Thank you very much for your time today. You were sitting on that side last year, Dr. Eldridge, so it's a little different this time. Anyway, I'm John O'Day. I'm the chairman of the Liberty Charter Board. I'm going to have our board members introduce themselves briefly, and then I'll do an introduction. You'll hear from each of them between our introduction and closing. Mr. McCall.
Good morning. I apologize for the shorts attire, but you don't want to see a prosthetic leg pop off today, I promise. So my name is Doug McCall, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here. I've been a Guilford County resident since 2006. I'm married, and I have a 7th grade daughter and a 3rd grade son who both attend a charter school in Guilford County. I've been blessed to be in the healthcare industry for the last 16 years, helping provide treatment options and solutions for patients with life-altering diseases and disorders. And I grew up as the son of a school principal, school teacher, who eventually went on, after doing that for 25 years, to raise money for universities and for nonprofit organizations. So when I say that service and education are in my DNA, it is not a lie. So I thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and I will send it to our next board member here.
Good morning. I'm Matthew Schneider, and I'm proud to be on this board. I'm a professor of English and associate dean of the School of Humanities and Behavioral Sciences at High Point University, and this year marks my 37th year as a classroom teacher, 32nd year as a university faculty member. And I'll tell you more about why I'm on this board a little bit later on, but I'm very excited about the possibility of opening up this school, particularly because it includes high school. And I'm a college teacher, so I see students coming right out of high school, and I'd love to make a contribution to their preparation for college and also to the improvement of the world that can be achieved through what we hope to offer at Liberty Charter Academy. So thank you so much, and I look forward to speaking with you and answering your questions. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Victor Jones. I'm a city councilman for High Point, my 2nd term. Been on council for 6 years, running for mayor this year. I'm from Raleigh. I went to Sanderson High School. I joined the Marine Corps right out of high school, served for 13 years, was on the front lines of Iraq in 2003. And now reside in High Point, obviously. I own 7 companies there and a nonprofit for veterans. So I'm a pretty busy advocate for our community, and I'm excited to present to you guys this morning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your service, sir.
Good morning. My name is Al Tariq Miller. You may have AJ Miller. I've been working for a company called Love's Travel Centers for 19 years this month. I'm married, a family of 5, graduate of NC State. We'll have a graduate of UNCG, hoping to attend Chapel Hill Medical School, hope. And I am on the board because I'm bringing a financial aspect to the game and to be able to analyze and hope that we can do something not only beneficial to the community, but also do it the right way from a financial aspect. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Williams couldn't be here today, as mentioned. So we were here last cycle. We have continued to work on and refine our application, and we have expanded from K through 8 to K through 12. We plan to open K through 9, as you heard, in year 1. In at least one site. We may possibly have multiple sites. Our recent survey data indicates that high school is now becoming more of a driving force for enrollment in lower grades. So that was our reasoning for moving into the high school arena. We're planning to locate in Southwest Guilford County. It is currently underserved by the LEAs in the area, and our charter philosophy is a core knowledge curriculum and a classical core knowledge curriculum. And that differentiates us from the other 2 charter schools that are that are also in the same vicinity. To talk a little bit more about our educational philosophy and program, I'd like to invite Mr. Snyder back up.
Thanks, John. I first became interested in charter schools after speaking with Mary Catherine Sauer, and after realizing what a tremendous gift it was for me to have had a classical liberal arts education, how that's enriched my life and how I think it's contributed to the growing good of the world. Very excited by the core knowledge curriculum that we're going to be offering in the elementary grades, because it builds a content-rich base of knowledge that has been shown by many recent studies to not only enable students to learn and gain more as they successively complete those the parts of that pyramid of knowledge. But it also seems to indicate that there's hope in this kind of an educational program for closing some of the achievement gaps that we've seen and that continue to bedevil especially elementary education. So I'm a big believer in the core knowledge curriculum. It's been shown to be effective. It's been shown to help students not just learn to read, but later on in their careers as students to read to learn. And as an English professor, that warms my heart, as I'm sure you could guess. And I think that the classical education culminating in the high school years, which is what we're going to be doing at Liberty Charter, is especially meaningful. A classical education, a liberal arts education, was once defined as instilling in students the best that has been known and said. And I know from my own experience as a liberal arts educator for now 37 years that the great books, knowledge about the world, knowledge about and wonder at the natural processes that we all engage in every day, that this is a great way to instill in students the ability to seek the true, the beautiful, and the good. And that ultimately, that's really what we want. We want students who not only have the kinds of intellectual and practical skills that are going to ensure their success, we want them to be people who are committed to continual improvement in their own lives and continual improvement in the world that we all share. And I think that this curriculum really does that. It helps students know and discern the true and the beautiful and the good. And it gives them inspiration to continue to seek that. I see my role on the board as protecting the integrity of that educational mission. You know from our application that our EMO is going to handle the day-to-day operations of the school, but I see my role on the board as the person who really is going to communicate the continual need of staying focused on that educational mission, of maintaining rigorous academics, of maintaining parental involvement, and of maintaining character development as an important part of what we do. So that's why I've decided to become involved in this, and I look forward to your questions and your comments. Thank you.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. All right, Mr. Jones, could you talk a little bit about the community need?
As I said, I served on city council for the last 6 years, and you all know what councils do, but not all of my constituents know. So a lot of people come to us and say, what can you do to improve our school system as a council member? And I have to tell them most times, not a lot. I don't have a whole lot of options. I can get your trash picked up, but I can't do much about the school system. But I do have a lot of constituents that want to see investment into the education and options for our kids in High Point. So when I heard about this initiative to bring this charter school to the High Point area, I was all in. I'm just here to advocate on behalf of 116,000 residents, citizens of High Point. We would love to see the state invest into our city. We'd love to be able to offer the options that charter schools would bring to our community. And this would be exciting news to be able to come back home to them today and let them know that we've got support of Raleigh. Thank you.
With that, we're ready for any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that introduction. I'm going to fill in today for Ms. Hare, who typically would lead this interview as head of the chair of the performance committee. So I will do my best to facilitate. Questions, we have 25 minutes of questions for the board. We also have time built in for the EMO representative as well. So why don't we just start with just some of the thoughts that you have. It might be helpful. We're going to just kind of rattle off some questions that we'll have, so maybe just take some notes and then you can come up and address them appropriately. So would anyone like to begin with questions that they have?
I was looking at the enrollment and capacity chart.
Sorry.
The enrollment at capacity table, multicolor. You have the grade, you have the years, 2025 all the way over to 2030. Kindergarten 80. So am I reading this right, that you are going to keep kindergarten at 80 for all of those years? First grade, you have 60. And then 2026, 27, 80 throughout. And then year 2, actually year 3, or grade 2, you start at 54 and then 81 all the way across. When I looked at that, I'm seeing, well, aren't those kids gonna move up? So that the next grade would increase the next year? And rather than going through all of the rest of that, was what I was saying. Am I reading that right?
Well, let's duly
Oh,
note that,
okay.
and then they can come up
They
and
can
answer
come
that here
up and
shortly. Yeah.
Okay.
I need maybe some explanation. Is the 40% budgeted for lunch, and why the decision was made not for the National School Lunch Program or something? But because if it's in the High Point area, I know that's an impoverished. There are big pockets of impoverished folks who are going to need some help with that, I imagine.
Okay.
No.
And I have another question, a question about governance. You say ATA is going to provide board development and assist with best practices and compliance. To what extent? While staying in your lane as management. It's good to see you're going to teach cursive writing. I'll let that comment. Your technology appears to be limited. Would like to know why. And let's see.
I'd like to know the rationale for your first year being K-9. That's a pretty big spread, and how will those ninth graders feel like they're in a high school? And you mentioned zero period in your ed plan. Like, what is that zero period? You know, I think it was in your high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I also noticed in your high school sequence of courses, you mentioned algebra, algebra 2, geometry, and not math 1, 2, and 3. Is that, I'd like to have some clarification on that. Is that just a title difference, or are you going to actually be teaching it in that sequence, algebra, algebra 2, geometry, where everybody else is doing math 1, 2, and 3? And you're going to be tested on math 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, I had that question too, because math 3 is like all three of those squished together with a little bit of trig, you know, so it's.
And then you also mentioned your outstanding teachers will be rewarded and recognized. What metric are you using to reward them? I applaud you for wanting to do that. I'd like to know what your metric is to do that. And what is your goal on your weighted lottery?
Ed, would like to add a couple other questions. I would like to go back to just the need and the evidence of the need. I have a question. There was a reference in the letter about a survey was done. I'd like to know when was the last time that survey was done, in terms of getting commitments that if you do open, parents are indeed very interested. I have a question about the facility. I know that the facility's not really been decided upon yet, but just a basic question: who's going to own it? Is the board owning the facility? Is that the EMO is going to own the facility? So the question around that. And then I do have some questions, but I'll hold off on these until we get to the sort of the EMO representative. I do have some questions about the EMO agreement, specifically around who owns what, and also just the term of that agreement as well.
Can I ask a question? Adding to Mr. Machado's question about K through 9, specifically related to the budget with personnel too. There's a significant difference with the amount of classes a ninth grader would need versus a kindergarten would need, and I just maybe some more discussion around the personnel for year 1 with a 9-10 grade span.
Mr. Sanchez, you were.
Yeah, I mean, I had a number of questions. I didn't understand the EDS number. Dave, you brought up, what's the weighted lottery goal? I mean, they projected 40% in the nutrition, 20% in the weighted, I think, the weighted lottery. We wanted to know some rationalization for those numbers. The goals seem very modest, given the fact that they said each child will grow a grade level a year. If they're there 3 or more years, they'll be grade level proficient, but yet the goals cap out at 71 and 68. Seems odd if you're saying everybody here 3 years or more is going to be grade level proficient, but the goals stay at that number and only grow 8% over 5 years, which I was surprised to see. I also think when you look at, I'm looking at the application, question 72 goes into great depth of what the EMO is doing. So my question to the board is, what do you do? Because 72 basically says that the EMO does everything. So I'm confused of, I guess, of the roles that the school is taking. And then I did want to know more understanding of the numbers for the lunch program. I didn't have the same math, but I guess how much are they spent? How much are they planning per meal? And how did they come up with those numbers?
Well, why don't we start there? We got a lot of a lot of questions, and you don't necessarily have to address those in order, but we'll give it our best shot. I think the first question was just, can you clarify the breakdown of your population each year, and specifically around grade level as well, as Mrs. Parley asked? You need to go to the microphone, please.
It was the numbers on the grade levels. And how we move students up levels?
Like it sounded like you have 80 in kindergarten, but then the next year you're going to have 60 in first grade. So explain a little bit about the breakdown, if you would.
Right. So we'd have the number. So the number of classrooms for kindergarten would be 4 in the first for kindergarten across the board. We'd have in our first year we'd have 3 first grade classrooms. In year 2 there would be 4. And we would expand classrooms for 2nd, 3rd grade. I think 4th through 8th would remain the same. Maybe 7th grade. 7th grade, actually, I think we would advance 1 classroom. And then for 9th grade, in year 2, we would advance 1. And of course, we would have 5 classes then in 10th grade for our first 10th grade class, and that would roll upward. We plan to create demand for the school, much like on the model of Cornerstone Revolution Academy, where they have significant wait lists. We would like, not that we want to have a wait list necessarily, but we believe that our school is going to be in demand in the area because of the services we offer and the educational opportunity. We don't think we're going to have problems filling the school. We think we're going to have problems having enough room for the kids who want to come to our school.
What makes you feel that way?
I think the combination of the management company and Mary Catherine Sauer's experience in the area, opening schools that become very high achieving and in demand. Revolution Academy has one of her schools has a waiting list. Cornerstone has a waiting list that would fill our school the first year. So we believe the demand in the area is significant. I mean, there were 80% of the respondents from our survey, which was last spring, would come to the school. It indicated they would likely come to the school if it was open and it was K through, and it was going to be a K through 12 school.
You say last spring, you're spring 2023?
23. 22.
I'm hearing 2 different answers.
23. Oh, this past spring. I'm sorry. I misunderstood because I do say thing. 23. I apologize.
So how does he know how many were on the wait list?
Beg your pardon?
In those other schools. Do you know the numbers on the wait list?
I know Cornerstone's 700, about 750. Greensboro Academy has been running, over 1,000. I don't know what Revolution is. It's probably a little smaller than that. But I know they all have wait lists. They're all not that far from where we are. Plus, we have the high demand and lower performing schools in our area. Mr. McCall, something to add?
Well, I can hopefully add some anecdotal experience. So my kids actually attend Revolution Academy, and they've been there since the doors opened during the pandemic of 2020. And that same model that you had questions about in terms of the stair step for classes increasing in size, I've been able to witness as a parent. And it's a scaled model, one, because you want to make sure that you can adequately meet the needs of the students that are there. You don't want to get too big too fast and be overwhelmed. But it also allows the board, the management company, to adapt as you evolve, to see where you might still need to meet some needs, to see where you might have some blind spots. So it's a sensible model in terms of how we evolve and how we grow. And I've seen it work in my kids' lives. So hopefully that helps clear a little bit of the air.
Why K9?
So in terms of K9, I can speak.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
To start this
Yes.
first year. Yeah.
So K-12 is a pretty heavy lift. And then also from what we've seen in terms of our data and our research, a lot of kids are less inclined to switch schools in their junior or senior year because they're already established in a high school. They already have their course curriculums in place. They have their friend network in place. They have their teams that they're involved in. And so K9 is a natural progression. So Revolution, for example, only goes K8. So my daughter might be someone that would consider going to Liberty Charter Academy. It also makes sense because the other K8 schools in the area are at capacity, and their wait lists are so big. We've also heard from parents that if they have an opportunity where they have a son or daughter who could attend the high school in 9th grade, they'd be more inclined to have their younger student as well attend. So it just, again, it's a sensible model. It keeps us in a focused track and not trying to do everything at once.
Oh, there were questions about the lunch. You want to repeat
Yeah, it's
that
really
question?
just explain the rationale or the 40%. I think Mr. Sanchez said
Between the 20% and the 40%?
So well, just like the how you're gonna feed kids, I guess is what I'm really.
We're gonna add a surcharge to the kids that are paying for a lunch and use those dollars as a means of funding the lunch for the underprivileged. The difference between the 20% weighted lottery, 20% weighted lottery is for preference. So we would give 20 slots, 20% of the slots preference to low income. And then we're still expecting more than 20% low income kids at that school based on the demographics of the area that we're in.
Yeah. Just to add to that, so that model has been taken from other schools too that have been doing that effectively, and it's just 5% below what we expect African American or other minorities to attend. So we feel real comfortable about that number based on other success programs.
Do you expect Hispanic kids?
We do, yes, sir.
I didn't see that. What are you projecting?
I believe 7%, if I'm not mistaken.
And there was a question raised about the national free lunch program. It was 10%? 10%. We're not saying we're not going to enroll into that program, but initially it is a complicated process. So the initial plan would not be to include that program as part of the funding, but we'll adjust as need be. If that becomes a need, obviously we'll enroll into that program.
Thank you.
What was the math though? What did you guys use as per meal to calculate how much you budgeted for to provide food?
The 325 included a surcharge. The 325 per meal included the surcharge that would cover the other meals that need to be covered.
So you're going to buy food. You're going to cater food for $325 per kid every day for 40%, roughly. You calculated 40%.
For the ones that purchase it, a lot of these students are bringing their own meals. A lot of them aren't purchasing food there.
I'm sorry. So for the students that you are
that are purchasing
Providing.
food. If we're providing food, there's a $3.25 cost in there, which includes a profit margin or a surcharge that will use to offset the cost of the other kids who don't have the financial means to pay for the meals.
So you're gonna provide food for everybody. Everybody can buy food, and at $3.25, there's enough in there as a surcharge to then pay for 40% of the kids to eat.
Correct.
Am I summarizing right?
Oh, I stand corrected. The $3.25 is for the free lunches. The others have a higher cost. So the ones that are paying have the surcharge on it. The $3.25 is the cost for the free lunches. That'll be funded by the surcharge on the other meals.
I'm gonna say
Yeah, that sounds like closer numbers, but, and you're catering, not preparing food.
Correct. We're not preparing food. We're not full service.
And is the plan that all kids will eat in classrooms, even middle and high school kids?
I believe that is correct. Yes, they will all eat in the classrooms.
Any other questions on lunch? We can always go back to it. What about the, can you address the questions around the rationale for the math sequence?
So, just to stay traditional, we like Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry. But we will adjust a bit to accommodate for the Math 1, 2, 3 exams.
The only reason I suggest that you think about the title is for transcripts. Like when kids are graduating and schools are used to seeing Math 1, Math 2, Math 3, Math 4, to be able to say you've completed those sequences. That's going to be important for any audits that are done on your transcripts, plus also for students that are enrolling in college or community college. They're going to have those expectations on the
I haven't personally. My daughter's in a school where she's in honors geometry. So she's.
Is it a public school?
It's not a public school, but just as a. Yeah. I mean, there are.
The state
I've seen
of
other
is going to
schools.
require that they have Math 1, Math 2, Math 3, Math 4.
Okay. All right, we can certainly adapt that. That's certainly a simple adjustment to our language if necessary. If it helps kids get into college better, that's something that we'll certainly do.
Well, I think if given a charter and you come back and do your renewal, I think it's going to help your test scores too. Because if you're teaching just straight geometry and then they got to take Math 2, it's not going to end well.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
So am I hearing that, just one clarification on that it's your intention to go back and offer Math 1, 2, and 3 versus Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and geometry? Is that something you're going to be talking about?
I think that's something we would discuss. I mean, we've stayed fairly traditional, with our scheduling with courses, but it's something we can take internally, and we're willing. Let me put it to you this way: we're willing to adjust for the benefit of the kids, right? I mean, once we have them enrolled in our school, they're our kids, and we want to do what's best for them. And if modeling after Math 1, 2, 3, 4 is the best way for them to be successful as students and be able to get into schools of their choice, that's exactly what we'll do. It's a minor thing to us as to how we name the courses.
Fair.
Can you address mental health support, social worker support in the first year or two? I can't find that in the budget.
I think Mr. McCall is going to be able to speak to that very directly.
So it's our intention to have what we would call a student support specialist, and that would be the ultimate utility player. I have seen that firsthand at Revolution Academy. This individual who fills that role there has had additional training in terms of mental health crisis interventions if needed. And I know that for a fact because it was a year ago today that I was in the hospital having my second of 3 amputations. So last year, my children, their world was wrecked. They saw their father, who was a superhero to them, go from being someone who rode bikes, ran marathons, to someone who, in the course of 50 days, became a above-knee amputee. So Miss Chicka, who is the individual at the school that fills that role, was meeting with my kids on a daily basis if necessary. And not only Ms. Chicka, but the entire administration rallied around my family. And so, I was a cheerleader in college. I see my role on this board as the cheerleader for this school and a cheerleader for these students. I'm going to be the one that's looking for those blind spots where we're not providing the services that kids need. I don't care whether you're white, black, Asian, Hispanic. We want to provide the best sources possible for those kids to succeed. I also know from personal experience, my nephew, who lives in a different state, his father committed suicide 4 years ago, and he has had a really tough time. And the school he's in has had those support pieces in place to the point where he feels like he can go off to college next year. So I know from experience that that is a need, and we will adapt the budget as necessary. If we feel that there is a specific position that needs to be created, mental health is not something to play with. We learned with COVID that it isolated kids, and it put everybody on an island. And there's a lot of kids that weren't able to process those emotions and what that impact was. And so that's going to be something as a board that we really adhere to and look at and make sure that we're providing the right solutions for those kids.
How many students at your child's school?
Approximately 675, 700. It's a K through 8 school, and they followed a similar stair-step model, like I said, in terms of enrollment. They added a grade each year, starting as K through 5 and went to K8.
And there's just one Miss Chicka?
There's just one Miss Chicka, but they also have just hired a second PE coach who was employed by Guilford County at a previous school, and he has gone through Guilford County's crisis and mental health training program. And then there are other staff or other teachers on staff there that have also been able to, like I said, cross-train, if you will. And that's something I think that there's an advantage to having American Traditional Academies help us with. That's something that they're aware of, and they can provide those resources. One of the questions from the board was, if the EMO looks like you're doing everything, why do you need a board? Mr. Friend, you said earlier in that discussion, it's not up to you all to make sure the schools are accountable. That's our job as a board, is to make sure the EMO is accountable. That's our job to make sure that we're that check and balance. And we intend to do that and hold them accountable every day.
I will say that 645 kids all the way across K-9, those different ages, is a lot of caseload for one Miss Chicka.
We understand that.
And if necessary, we would contract with the community to bring in additional support staff. I mean, that's certainly something that we have in our thought process.
Me jumping in on that, yeah, it's never been more of a time to have support staff in the school for kids that are beyond just what they're doing in the classroom. But someone that used to supervise schools in High Point, when I worked in Guilford County Schools, there's a definite need. And I'm not just talking about counselors, I'm talking about a school nurse. There's going to be a lot of basic needs to be met, and teachers aren't equipped to do both the instruction and, taking care of all those basic needs. So I would strongly recommend that you guys think about that.
Yes, and Ms. Chicka also, to some degree, fills that role as school nurse. She's the one that hands out medications for kids that need it. She's the one that manages those records and communicates with families and their physicians if children need to come in and take their ADHD medicine, for example. And she's also the one that has the first aid and CPR training if a child were to need some sort of intervention.
Sounds like Wonder Woman.
She's amazing. She really is.
Oh, you're going to ask questions?
We're
button up on time.
Up on time, and I got a lot of questions.
All right.
What's the rationale for? I appreciate your response that your job, one of your jobs as a board member, is to hold the EMO accountable. The employees are co-employed, correct, by the board and the EMO.
The teachers are.
Why? Because that would seem to me that if things went south with the EMO, you've not only lost your EMO, you've lost your staff.
We haven't lost necessarily. No, they're code-employed, so we can keep them.
But
that doesn't mean
they're
we
co-employees. It takes their other employer permission to keep them.
That that's something that we certainly would be able to negotiate with as an exit strategy with our management company if that was necessary. Part of the exit would be we would want first preference on the teachers.
So if I'm an old social studies teacher. So if I'm a social studies teacher at this school, my employer is you and the EMO. If the EMO 3 years from now, 5 years from now is not in the picture, and I want to keep teaching at Liberty, I have to get permission
No,
to
I don't
break
think.
my contract with
No.
the EMO? Like, how
No,
does
you
that
don't.
work?
No, you didn't. You do not have to give permission. The teachers can stay with us.
Does it say
They
that in
don't.
the contract?
They
Yeah,
do
I don't know if
not
that's-
have to.
Maybe it's me and I missed it. I don't think that's clear in
I
the
don't
application.
think it's clear in the contract.
Well, if it needs to be tightened up, we can amend the contract. That's a fairly simple thing that we both agree on that. I mean, as a management company and board, we both agree that on that one particular case, that if the teacher, if we break up, for lack of a better term, we get a divorce, the teachers are welcome to stay with us, and the management company would agree with that. And if we need to amend our
I don't think the
that's a simple amendment.
co-employment is unique to this proposal or this application. I think it's the clarity in language as to what would happen in that situation.
Well, we can clarify the language, a simple amendment. Like I said, we already agree with that. We already both agree with that.
Who put the budget together? Was that mostly the board? Was it the EMO?
It was the EMO put the budget together. The budget you see in the application is incorrect. There was a mistake found in it after publication. We do have an amended budget that does show the 2%.
It's real different. Ashley emailed it just a little bit ago, and it's real. There's a lot of differences.
So it's different because we found some errors. I mean, once we vetted the budget, once I vetted the budget, we found some errors, we talked about it, and we made some adjustments, and they resubmitted the budget. For example, the 2% didn't equate to a 2% surplus each year. So that was a big one for us. EC services will probably have a slight change there with the amendment that you asked for. So we do have a revised budget. Were we able to submit a revised budget? So we do have a revised budget, and we'll make sure to submit that too.
Is this the correct one on the screen?
Is this the correct one? Because this is the one we had, I think, in the original app file.
It is not.
It is not.
I have a copy here. We can talk about it.
And I also, just to clarify, so we are at time, but we did allot an additional 30 minutes since this was a management company app, so it's, up to you guys how you want to do that, but.
So Ashley, is the one that you emailed this morning, is that the correct?
No, that's the budget that was incorrect. We found the error, and then I hold in my hand.
So we've now reviewed two wrong budgets.
Right.
Okay.
So what is your, so here's what caught my eye.
I think it was the same budget. I think what she emailed to you is the budget that was in the application, so I think it's the same budget.
The one big difference that, for me, is that what was on eBoard had only one EC teacher for year one, and the one that was
we have
this morning had three.
Yeah, we planned for 3.
So those aren't the same. But so I guess what you have is a third.
What is the one I reviewed in preparation for today, for example, under operations, had, for example, classroom technology computers, and it had $43,000 each of the 5 years. Did that change?
It did not. No, sir, it did not.
So are students utilizing laptops in the classroom, Chromebooks? Because at $43,000 in your first year, that's a technology allotment of $66 per student. By year 5, that's down to $8 a student. That's not a lot of technology.
Yeah, so one of our goals as a school is to be a limited technology school. There are multiple studies that show increased screen time leads to poor outcomes for kids from a mental health standpoint. It just continues to hit that dopamine loop. So our goal is to use laptops for NW.
Is that the study that you're talking about? Is that instructional screens or like cell phone?
Cell phone, but we're trying to we recognize that kids probably have enough screen time on their own at home, and we don't want to contribute to that. So when we use screen time, it will be for NWEA testing, things of that sort, and it will be fairly limited, to be perfectly honest. I mean, my kids hardly ever need a laptop. The times they needed it were when we were shut down for a few weeks with COVID. But the budget that you see there, a lot of that will reflect the laptops being provided for teachers and staff.
So you're saying you're a college prep school that's going to produce a high school, and then the kids are going to go to college, but in your school, they're not really going to use technology. I'm just throwing.
The technology's limited. They will use technology. There will be one set of Chromebooks per grade.
What, $8 a student, it'll be very limited. I'm not trying to be funny. That's the math.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, this is another area where if what we're doing, and this is up to us as a board, right? I mean, this is part of what we do. We plan and we adjust as needs warrant. So if we need more computers, we will budget for more computers. And if we need more technology time, we will add more technology time to the curriculum.
What I heard you say is that you're gonna have a set of computers per grade level.
Per grade level.
So that's why the low cost.
How's that gonna work in testing?
I was just gonna say, realistically, K through 9, if you're using map testing, and that's 3 times a year, times an entire school theoretically shutting down for testing 3 times a year, just logistically, we just did it a week ago. That's just a concern of mine, and I wonder if that's the gap from the management organization supporting you on the budget versus the realistic, starting the school year with a testing cycle. I just can't figure out the algorithm in my head of how all those kids will test in one cycle, sharing so many computers.
What I've seen with my kids at Revolution is there are designated days per grade level. So they're not all doing it on Monday and Tuesday. They stretch it out over maybe 2-week time period. And so I'm thinking that's how that they not only manage the technology in terms of having enough resources, but then they also are able to stay more efficient as a school where they're not just shutting down completely and doing testing for everybody in a couple-day window.
We're going to transition a little bit if we may. We'll probably come back and have more questions for the board as well. But
Just one more
yeah,
question.
sure.
Because we were on it, you brought up with the teachers. I'd like to ask the board chair. So, we asked you a nuanced question regarding the teachers and their dual employment. I guess I'm wondering the same question for the administrators. The administrators are
Employees
selected,
of the employees.
hired, trained, evaluated, assigned, disciplined, and transferred, and can be terminated. It's all by, I guess
Correct.
my real question is, why would you enter an agreement in which the person leading your school, leading your charge for the whole vision you're creating, you have no jurisdiction over, so to speak?
It's it's one of the stipulations of the management agreement because the biggest reason why is because the principal is responsible for the operation of the school. ATA is responsible for the day-to-day operation of the school and has to have the administrator employed by them to hold that administrator accountable. That way, the administrator is one boss, one purpose. The board manages ATA. We manage ATA, and it's not like we wouldn't have a say in the principal. We don't. Not that the management company has to give us a say, but we are a team that works together, and we will work together on the selection of the principal, even though in the end the decision is up to
Let me just ask you a
ATA.
follow-up.
Okay.
You have a for-profit company that is taking 14% of your revenue,
Correct.
in which they are solely responsible for the leader of the school, who in your mind is responsible for student learning. But in their mind, they're hiring an agent to be in there to make sure that that 14% is where it should be. Do you not see an inherent conflict in that decision-making process for somebody to lead a school for a for-profit who's trying to make a profit, and then a non-profit who's trying to maximize student learning?
We have the same goal. We want to maximize student learning. The agreement between us, the fees are very similar to other management company fees that are successful Those management companies also employ the principal, those schools. It's not an unusual model.
I'm just asking you, your purpose in it.
My purpose in it is to do the best I can to educate kids. I believe this model will be successful, or I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here for the third time with the same school. I do believe in the model. I believe it'll work. And I believe that if it doesn't work, if we can't if we can't agree in some area and we have to terminate the agreement, I believe that, if you can't tell by this board, we're a strong board. I believe that we will take the action that's required. We would terminate the agreement. We would move forward. We would hire another principal, or we would try to retain that one, and we would move forward for the kids. They're going to be our kids, and we're going to take care of them no matter what the situation is. And we will adapt. That's part of what I think our role is to adapt to any situation. It's not always going to go right, and when it's not going right, we need to assess where we are and be honest about it, and take the action that's required to get the ship back on the course.
Thank you for your answer.
Thank you.
Anything else for us, Mr. Primary Manager?
I'm sure we'll come back to you, yeah. I still have questions that aren't on my list, but I also want to be cognizant of time as well. So why don't we transition to questions that we have specifically for the representative for the EMO. I'll start if I may. First question I have is just make sure we're all clear on the term. It says that the agreement shall commence on the effective date unless terminated or renewed as set forth for herein. Shall continue until termination or expiration of the initial charter.
Yes.
So is this term for perpetuity, or is this term just for the first 5 years if they get the charter?
Just for the first 5 years of that initial charter term, and then it would need to be renewed.
Okay. Back to that question earlier, I know that there's not a facility that you can say that's it, that's where we will be, but who's going to own the facility?
So once they have a permanent facility, the plan right now is that ACD will develop that facility, lease it back to the school, and with the plan for them to buy it once they're stable and can get, whenever they're ready to get traditional financing. It's a model that lots of schools have used because it's hard to get, especially now, but it's hard to get that financing before you're open. And
So
before
who was going to be the funder of the school? The
ACD.
ACD.
Yes, sir. That's I've used them for several projects already. They built Piedmont Classical High School. They built Revolution Academy. Had a good working relationship with them, and both of those schools have now turned it around. Both those schools own their own facility right now. The advantage, one of the things that I think you all have been traditionally concerned about is that the EMO has too much leverage. And when the EMO owns the school, and it can be difficult for schools to terminate that relationship. I think having, part of the idea was having ACD do that separately. They're a little bit connected because we have some of the same people involved, but they are a separate organization from ATA. That would make it easier for the school to terminate that agreement with ATA because it doesn't affect their facility.
What's similar people?
Similar people. Taft and Mike Morley are principals in American Charter Development, which is that development company, and they're my partners in American Traditional Academy. But being separate entities, again, I believe that we've given an advantage to the school and allowing them, if they wanted to terminate the agreement with the management company, then it does not affect their agreement for the facility.
Does that, I guess the optics don't look good within that. I guess I'd like you to respond to that. You have a management company making 14% of the revenue, who then is deciding on the construction company who's going to build a building, make a premium on both the lease and then the sale, and there's joint characters in both.
I mean, I see your point, and I've heard you say that before. Again, I'm going to say that, first of all, we're not making 14%, because out of that 14%, we provide a lot of services that cost us money. That's not profit. So just to be clear, That's the fee, but we do a lot with that. That's not profit. But the other thing I'll say is that, again, I believe that by having them separate, the advantage goes to the school. Most EMOs maintain the facility and keep the facility themselves and lease it back long-term to the school, which gives more leverage to the EMO. And so, again, by setting it up this way, the intent was to give a little more leverage to the school.
Were they involved in decisions on hire ACD?
Was the board involved?
Like, is that their decision or yours?
It's technically, according to the contract, my decision, the EMO's decision, but they know that going into it, so I think that's a decision that they've made. They're all familiar with what ACD has done. They've been in the schools that ACD has developed. They like that. So I think their eyes are open. I think they're going in informed. If it became a situation where they wanted to do something else, we're open to that. The first time that this school came, I believe, in front of you, we left it a little bit more ambiguous in the EMO agreement because we wanted to make sure you knew that there were other options. ACD is looking right now for Legacy at the possibility, or we're trying to get a bond for them so that they would own it from the beginning. It's not that we're married to that idea. We actually put that idea more clearly in the EMO agreement based on feedback from you all that you didn't like the ambiguity of we don't know who's going to own the building. Well, now you know. I'm sorry if you don't like it. There's still a possibility that, again, we could do something else. We're open to that idea. We want to do what's best for the school.
One of the advantages of an EMO is, particularly for schools that are trying to get off the ground, is you bring a wealth of resources and expertise to help them get a school started and ongoing. So it's that expertise, but it's also money. Let's be honest. It's money. There's no, as we talked about yesterday, there's no startup dollars coming from the state. It's just how do you pay for the things that you need to get a school up and running? And I think this question came up last year, if I remember correctly. It just doesn't seem like when we look at your EMO compared to some of the bigger national providers, that you're just, I can't word it anywhere, that you have cash on hand. Like,
right.
Do you have the financial resources to pull this off? What if in that first year their enrollment isn't what they think it's going to be, and there's are you able to provide them the financial resources they would need?
Yes.
If they get into this building that they own and they're short on rent, are you ready to make sure that they don't default?
Yes, we are, and I'd like to address that in a couple of ways. I'm going to say that the first time when I was opening schools and I looked around and thought, that's the hardest thing I've ever done, and it shouldn't be that hard. And I looked around and I said, there's got to be a better way. So I started looking at other models and what we could do. The first time I came in front of you after that was with a CMO and a nonprofit, because it's not about money to me. It's about how can we do this better so that we can do more, so that we can support more kids. And that was the question then. You said, well, you don't have the resources to pull this off. So I found some partners who have the resources. And while we don't, because no one in business does this, you don't just take lots of money and park it in a checking account, right? That's not the way, it's not a smart business move. But we do have resources. They've committed $500,000 to loan the school for the opening for that startup. That's why you'll see our startup budget like that. They've got, I don't know if this will come up next month, I guess, because the Legacy enrollment is not where it needed to be. We've stepped in and we're doing a combination of lowering our fee and loaning them money to make sure that they're going to be successful this first year. We're willing and able to do that if necessary. Part of why, though, that they have us is that I've done this several times without those resources. I use my credit card to open Cornerstone and Piedmont and Revolution, and it's we're also not able to have that principal full time during that planning year. We're going to be able to do that this year. Our budget includes hiring more than just the principal during that planning year. I can't even imagine what that would be like. That's amazing to me. I think we're going to be able to be in a position to help them be in a position where they don't need extra resources, but if they do, yes, we're willing and able to step in. We also, partly because of that partnership with ACD, we're able to take those startup funds that we're going to loan them, and we're going to roll that back into their facility cost so that it doesn't have it's already been accounted for in their budget. So if you look at their facility cost, that would includes those startup funds that roll into the cost of their new facility.
So the facility first year, and I realize I'm looking at a budget that's not the budget, so maybe these numbers are not correct. They had in their first year like 1.4 million for the facility, and then 891,000 to the EMO.
That number's still the same.
That's
Yes.
still the same.
And can I say something about the budget? I have no idea why you would have gotten a one budget and then another this morning. We submitted a budget with the application that the mistake in that budget, which Mr. Miller caught when we were reviewing it, is that the surplus was not the 2%. So they have a goal of at least a 2% surplus. That budget did not have that, which was obviously a mistake. That's a matter of I didn't go back and check that before I submitted it. That's my fault. But I have, at the board's request, fixed a new budget that has that over 2% surplus each year, because that's part of the way we work together. I made a mistake. It fell short. I've already fixed it. But we didn't change figures like that. It was a very small fix. We haven't submitted that because we're not allowed to submit that again. But I don't know why you would have two others before that. That's not my mistake. I don't know why. So we've submitted one budget for the application. I've submitted another budget to the board that corrects that first mistake.
Where is this $500,000 shown it's not in the working capital, or is that a mistake?
It's not in the working capital. They don't have it yet. It's not money that they have, but it is in the startup plan, and the startup budget shows that the $500,000. It's also there's a letter from the Morley's Bank saying that they have resources that will cover that $500,000.
And when do they have to start paying that back?
They wouldn't start paying that back. It's wrapped into the development cost. So they don't start paying it back until they start paying the lease payments on the development cost, which is usually a couple of months after they move in to the new facility.
And so it's part of that $1.4 million?
Yes, sir.
So that money is being fronted by American Charter Development?
Yes, sir.
So it's essentially just a developer
Yes, sir.
investment. Okay.
Mhm.
So I don't think that doesn't count as a infusion from the management company, right? It's a facility, I'm building a facility, I have a developer who's gonna front $300,000 for,
right.
that before we close on our bond. It's basically like that.
Okay.
So what is the so is there another amount, so you're gonna pay the principal in the first year?
So
In the startup year?
Yes, the principal will be paid but it'll come out of the startup funds.
The $500,000?
Yes, sir.
So the developer's also paying that?
Sure.
Essentially?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that's not being paid by your management company?
Well, correct.
Okay. And then the 891,000 in the year one. So you have, it looks like you have like 4 people on your staff, but I'm not counting I'm not gonna count the developer person because I'm gonna assume he's paid by the development company. So it's like you and Randy and Dennis and Meg. Is there any other staff?
Not yet.
So do you have like could you give us some insight into where is that 800,000? Like, what are we talking about? Because like one of those folks is an ops manager, which is great, but you also have an operations manager. You know, it looks like definitely like staff development is in there. You're going to do financial and student accounting. All right, so who is the accountant on that team?
So we're starting out, right? We're a small startup. We have right now 1 school, and as we grow, our plan is to develop staff and bring all that in-house. But we can't hire someone to do all that accounting and financing and stuff for 1 small school, right? So for now, we're having to contract out a lot of things. We're having to contract out things that down the road we might not have to do that because it becomes less efficient. But now it's the best way to get the best outcome for the school. So the plan is that we contract. I'm working with Acadia right now on Legacy. Plan to still do that with Liberty until we get to a point where it makes sense that we can bring someone in-house. It just makes sense to do that.
So the management company is just contracting the services.
Contracting some of the services. We do have Dr. Shaver, who is doing a lot of the principal support and development, which is something that an independent schools don't do well, from what I can see. So he's doing that. I'm doing a lot of other things myself, supporting the schools. But as far as some of the other things, we're having to contract that out now.
I have a question about ownership of, just again in the EMO contract about who owns what, and so it reads that purchases made by ATA on behalf of the school with school funds are the property of the schools.
Correct.
ATA on its own and the school shall have no claim to any personal property leased or purchased by ATA with its own funds.
So if we purchase
But aren't
something,
your funds the school's funds?
our funds are not the school's funds. There's a separation there.
Once they pay you, it's
they
your
pay us
funds.
a fee. Then now we have funds. If we buy something for the school, maybe this might be a good example. I see as we grow, this being a possibility. We have temporary facilities right now. And we may, if I have schools with temporary facilities, maybe I'm renting maybe I buy as an ATA, those partitions that we need, or some TVs on wheels and stuff that the school doesn't need after they get in their permanent facility. Maybe we keep that, and so we get that back because we've paid for it. If the school pays for it, they keep it, or they sell it, or they do whatever you want. But if it's things that we can provide schools that are in temporary facilities, then maybe that would be a situation. I can't think of a lot of situations where that would happen, but that's one that might be a good use of our funds.
Does the school and the leader of the school have the autonomy? So once you have this budget,
yes.
I'll go back to my technology question since I asked that one earlier. You put, and I realize this is a little bit of a make-believe scenario, but I think it's important. In the budget, you've got X allocated for technology. Does the school leader and the board have the discretion to decide what technology that is? Or, yes, they're purchasing it, but you're telling them you've got to purchase it, you got to purchase this, and it needs to be from this provider.
No, we don't. We haven't dictated specific providers or anything like that. I was looking puzzled because yes, they have some discretion, but part of my job and part of ATA's job is to make sure that things are on track. And So no, if we're supposed to, if the plan is to have these Chromebooks, this grade level set of Chromebooks that we can use, and the test, going back to the testing thing, I've made that work. I know how to make that work. When you don't have a one-to-one, you don't have too many Chromebooks, but you need to do the testing. It can work. I've done it, but if they're supposed to buy Chromebooks with it, and the principal decides that really we want a bunch of TVs around, I think that's where I step in and say, no, we need these for the educational purposes. So there is some discretion. They can say, but we got these Dells on sale over here. I don't want to buy your Levinos. And I'm going to say that makes sense because you want to do what's best for the school. Let's do that. But so there's some discretion. There's not total control.
I want to ask you the same question we asked earlier about the situation with the co-employment. If something were to transpire in your organization and the board is not working together,
right?
I mean, if I'm the high school social studies teacher, what prevents you from saying, "Hey, Bruce, we need you. You're still my employee, so I'm going to assign you over to one of my other schools."
So the fact that they're not indentured servants partly makes me do that. They have agency, and we do 1-year teacher contracts. So if we separated, none of those teachers would not be any penalty even if they broke the contract, right? Because you're allowed to do that in North Carolina, in America. You can decide to go work for someone else. There's nothing that would keep the teachers from staying with the school.
So it's a 1-year contract.
It's a 1-year contract for the teachers. Yes, they would not be able to take the principal. That's something that they would not be able to do. But all the other employees they could take.
But so I understand they're not indentured servants and it's an employment at will state. But I feel like the contract is not in keeping the teacher from working somewhere else, but rather keeping the board from hiring someone else. Because they can't decide to hire a teacher that doesn't work partially for you.
Well, that's just good practice. You don't want the board to decide to hire teachers. I've actually seen boards do that, and it doesn't.
I understand, but I'm saying that what you're describing is not reality. Because they can't just stop working for you and go work for the school.
I'm sorry. I understood the question to be in case of a termination with the agreement. So I apologize. You're correct. As they don't terminate the agreement, we have a teacher that is an issue. We have the ability to terminate that teacher with the board's approval. So I can't terminate the teacher without the board's approval. I can't hire anyone without the board's approval. But it's important to have a chain of command that makes sense and to have a structure in place to where the principal vets the teachers and the principal recommends the teachers for hire and the principal has a lot of control over who's in her building.
But you can hire and fire without their approval everyone but teachers.
Correct.
I know we're up against time here.
I have
one more question, and then we'll.
On your 14% fee that you mentioned, if a school is not able to pay the full 14%, did you say you roll that over, or is it forgiven?
No, sir. So, as in the case with Legacy, Legacy needs some help because they can't afford to. So we're reducing our fee. In addition, they might have to borrow money, but we're reducing our fee for that. There are some. Yeah, we're prepared to work with the school. We only do well if the school does well.
Borrow money from who?
They would be doing another line of credit that will eventually roll into their permanent facility as well.
Who's the line of credit from?
That would be from ACB.
What, in terms of like reducing the fee, I haven't been on the board. Legacy Classical just opened?
Just open, yes, sir.
So, I guess, did they not perform on enrollment?
Correct. Our enrollment is lower than we expected.
By how many kids?
So we're at 120, and 150 is what we said was our break even.
Great. So my thing is like, that's a management company's fault. So it's not a big deal to reduce your fee because their whole thing. Like, they're supposed to recruit kids, right? I mean, what else are they? Isn't that what a management company does?
Marketing, the marketing side, right?
Yeah, I mean
marketing.
Now they have 21,000 in this budget, but
That's actually 21,000 in the first year budget. We have a larger amount for marketing in the planning year, which is the crucial time to market for your first year.
You have a large. Who is that?
I'm sorry, the school has a budget for marketing in the planning year budget. We also, one of the services the management
year out of that 500,000.
Yes, sir. One of the services the management company provides for marketing are the services that we can have the graphic designer, and we design the things and we develop their marketing materials, and then out of that budget would come the actual printing the flyers.
Out of that $500,000
Yes, sir.
budget.
Yes, sir.
So like, how much is that? Like, how much is budgeted for?
I don't remember.
I guess my
For what?
my thing is like, okay, so there's the management fee, but then there's also like, it sounds like the development company is paying for marketing, right? With that line of credit. I just feel like if the management company, if you don't perform on enrollment, like of course you should reduce your target.
Yeah,
and also they have 21,000 in the budget for marketing. That's a lot. I mean, I could create some materials.
Well, it does say in the contract that the responsibility of improvement and enrollment is the EMO's responsibility, but does not list that as a reason for termination, like failure to enroll kids to meet budget.
Well, they could terminate us without a reason. So you don't know your reason. Yes, it's the management, the EMO's responsibility to recruit, and I agree with you. We didn't do that as well as we should have. We're reducing our fee. Absolutely, that's a reflection on us as well. I think there are reasons for it, but yes.
Could you just list out? So it's year one. It's $900,000. What are the specific? So Acadia per pupil, you figure 50K, right? How many kids again? How many kids? 60. Let's say 60.
It's 1,000 per kid.
Let's say 60K per kid. What are the specific other things the management company is doing?
We're doing all the professional development.
Okay.
We're doing technology support services, so the IT guy and all those things. We're doing the student manager software support, which is Acadia does that, and the payroll stuff, the marketing services, which includes.
Doesn't Acadia do payroll?
Right. Yes, sir.
Okay.
The marketing services, which includes, again, the plan and the development. I mean, the design.
But not the materials, because
but
we
not the
have
materials. That's correct.
21,000 in the budget for
and then
marketing.
website design and support.
But that's not coming out of the 21K. That's coming out of the management.
That's coming out. Those are the things I just listed that are coming out of that management fee.
Website, PD.
Now, I frequently say I don't have any new ideas, because what I do with everything I've done is I take what looks like it works and what other people are doing well, and I copy it. So when I was looking at what kind of fee to charge, and when I was looking at how to write the management agreement, I looked at probably a dozen other EMO contracts, and I just
I mean, I'm not.
I picked a number lower than what they did.
I mean, 14%. I mean, I think anything over 12 is high, but but I guess this isn't specific to this situation, but I think like we need to be pressing on the value proposition of any management organization, because there is no actual investment from the management company into the school. That $500,000 is from the developer, which has a very vested
In this
interest.
case. Yeah.
Well, we also paid for all the application expenses, which each year we have to come back. It's more and more. So I paid.
How much was the application this year?
There's a $1,000 application fee, but the actual money to produce the application and submit and go through all this is higher than that.
Yeah.
When I did Revolution, because we had to come back twice, I spent like over $20,000 just on that. So that is an investment, especially for a small group like us.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I'd like
These are the exact same questions I asked Charter One the first time that they came, and I rejected their application. I asked the exact questions because I think it's really important because we don't see the budget of the management company. So I think it's like we need to get what is the value proposition of the management company? I just want to make sure we're asking that question clearly.
And I think the board has to answer that question.
Yeah, the board. So I guess I'm interested to hear from the board.
I'd like to.
What do you see as a value proposition?
I think we should probably let them do their closing statement, and
Sure.
then we're going to have time for discussion, and we may during that time also be able to ask them additional questions if needed. So, if you would, you have 10 minutes for a closing statement. If you need 10 minutes.
What's that?
If you need 10 minutes.
Are you suggesting?
I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just making a statement.
All right, you heard from three of us so far. Let me have AJ come up and talk to you for a few minutes, and we'll wrap up.
Thanks again for having us. I think that just to